delighted to introduce our speakers. On my far right there we have John Strafford, and John is the Vice Chair of the Conservative Action for Electoral Reform and a supporter of the Yes to Fairer Votes campaign. He joined the Conservative Party in 1964 and was a councillor for the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea. He has served at nearly all levels of the Conservative Party, including being a member of the party's National Union Executive Committee for 9 years and 3 years on the Conservative Board of Finance. John is also the author of Our Fight for Democracy, a history of democracy in the UK. So over to John Strafford.
Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for that introduction. I'm going to start off by being clearly partisan, because what I want to do tonight is just to tell you why the main opposition to AV is coming from the Conservative Party, and why I think that they're wrong in doing so. First of all, let me quote one or two things to you. And although I'm sceptical about polls and how people expect results to turn out in elections under AV, it's interesting that detailed research has shown that something like 40% of Conservative voters support AV. Lord Ashcroft, who is probably the Conservative Party's most famous polling guru, actually thinks that the Conservative Party will do better under AV. The YouGov poll thinks that the Conservative Party will do better under AV. AV gives choice to the electorate, and that is a Conservative value. So why is it, with all these things in favour of AV, has the Conservative Party decided to come out against it? Although, to be fair, David Cameron has said there are free votes for Conservatives. I think that basically what is happening is the Conservative Party is having a Duke of Wellington moment. If you recall, in 1832, the Duke of Wellington, at the time of passing of the Reform Act, opposed the extension of democracy that the people wanted. And they were saying, well, actually, we have the best parliament, we have the best democracy, why do we want to change it? And I go back to the research that's been done on the voting and intentions, because it would appear that at the moment that something like 60% of the population are in favour of AV, with 40% against. But when you look at young people, the number in favour goes up hugely. But as people age, then by the time you get to the age of 60, the population view switches, and first past the post becomes more popular to the aged. You then look at the Conservative Party, and the average age of a Conservative Party member is 68. And they fit into that category of supporting first past the post. They are similar to the rest of the population. Well, we have got to recognise in the Conservative Party that democracy has moved on. And whereas it was perfectly legitimate 60 years ago for first past the post, because we only had two parties in our electoral system, and if one party won, it meant that they probably got more than 50% of the vote. Those days are over. In 1951, turnout in that election was 84%. By 2005, it had dropped down to 59%, and last year it was 65%. And the reason for this drop in turnout is because people know that their votes don't count, and the three main political parties have realised that when they're fighting elections, all they're interested in are the 10% of marginal seats, and within those marginal seats, the 10% that are floating voters. In other words, all they're interested in, ladies and gentlemen, is that 1% that would determine the result of the election. In 1951, the Conservative Party and the Labour Party votes added together came to 97.5% of those votes cast. In the last election, it was 65%. In 1951, 83% of MPs were elected with over 50% of the vote. In this last election, it was less than a third of the vote.
1 minute, John.
These are long-term trends, and the Conservative Party has got to start reaching out to those parts of the country, apart from the home counties, in which it can get more MPs in the north and in the Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. In the referendum, we will have a choice between first past the post or the alternative vote. The great advantage of the alternative vote is that every vote will count, so this should increase turnout. Another advantage is that two-thirds of the seats will become marginal, and this will force the political parties to address the concerns of the majority of the people rather than the 1%. That has got to be good for democracy. Our Parliament is supposed to be a representative democracy, but it is not representative of women, it is not representative of ethnic minorities, it is not even representative of our political parties. The system is morally bankrupt, so it's time for the people to decide.
Thank you. Right, Richard.